Welcome to a new edition of South Sound Business Report. It's an environmental program today. We're going to be understanding life cycle assessment and how businesses and communities are using it to build a better future for all of us. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Jeff Rouse. Thanks for joining us here along the shores of Theophos Waterway in downtown Tacoma. Behind me is the Center for Urban Waters and the center of a designated Technology Innovation Partnership Zone that seeks to link university research to the business community and create jobs in that process. We'll get back to the zone in a few minutes. But first, let's talk with Colleen Hall-Barta, who is Development Director for the Institute of Environmental Research and Education. Can you explain what we're talking about now, the IERE? What is it?
Well, IERE is a nonprofit organization founded in 1987 by our director, Rita. And our sole mission is to support fact-based environmental decision-making. Pretty simple.
Okay.
And all of our work associated with the Institute is based in the science of life cycle assessment. And that's a 40-year discipline, and that basically means it's the analyzation of products and services from cradle to grave.
I still don't quite understand.
What cradle to grave?
Well, no, what is life cycle analysis? What are we talking about? Are we talking about products, goods, or services, or both?
It's both.
And what are you or what's being analyzed?
Evaluate. So yes, you can do both products and services, and it looks at everything through the whole life cycle of that product or service. That means from your basic extraction of minerals or anything like that.
The raw materials that go into it.
Mm-hmm. And then through your manufacturing and production phase, and then your end use and your disposal phase. So that's the entire picture. You know, most people are familiar now in the last 5 years with carbon footprints and water footprints and energy footprints. Those are three categories within a full life cycle assessment.
Okay.
Depending on the product or service, you will analyze anywhere between 11 to 14 different impact categories.
Wow. Okay. And will they be consistent for a product but different for a companion product?
No. And that's the beauty of this. This whole it's actually a three-step process to get an environmental product declaration label that we're going to talk about. Up front, the very first piece that has to happen is to create what's called a product category rule. So these are the rules that are created by an industry group. So for instance, we're going to talk about the brewers later. So we did a national call for participation, anyone that's an interested party. So that means through the whole value chain of producing beer. So hops growers, grain growers, bottlers, packaging, all of those people are interested parties. So they're asked to serve on this product category rule committee. And that committee determines how the measurements will be done.
Okay.
So just like with the nutrition label, those parameters were set by the
Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration,
right.
Exactly. Right. And that's so that every product that when you go to the store and you view that product, you know everyone's used the same rules to create that label. It's the exact same premise for an environmental product declaration.
But let's clarify, the process that you're discussing is not government set
Absolutely
or
not.
Mandated or anything. It's
it's
a marketplace-driven endeavor?
Well, it's part of the life cycle assessment. You have to have the rules so that you know how to do the measurements for that product.
Okay.
Okay? So everyone's playing on the same page, right? So the rules are created. You take those rules and then you do your life cycle assessment following those rules exactly. And the reason we know it's exact is because it's third-party reviewed. We don't do those reviews.
Okay.
So there's certified life cycle practitioners that go and take a test that is administered through the American Center for Life Cycle Assessment. So you know that's been reviewed by someone who's not part of the process.
So the evaluators or the analyzers have credibility because they have met a standard that your process has set up.
Right, and they're certified, and they take a very stringent 3.5-hour exam.
Who would ask to do this? I mean, who wants to have their product or their service certified, and why?
Actually, it's not a certification. It's the label is not a certification.
Okay.
It's simply disclosure.
Okay.
A lot of people kind of get that confused. It's not a certification. Again, like the nutrition label, it just tells you what you are and
All
what
right.
your impacts are.
And it doesn't say this rating is good or bad or otherwise.
It doesn't tell you if you're good or bad, exactly.
Okay.
It just tells you what you are and what
Okay.
your impacts are.
Who cares? And why would anybody
someone
go
wanna
through it?
do
Yeah.
A lot of people care. Within industry, there are a lot of regulations, whether it be an environmental regulation or any other type. And we're at the point now that globally, these kind of labels are being asked for and being mandated on products. France has actually passed legislation to require the Type 3 Environmental Product Declaration on consumer goods. And so US-made products, people that are already trading globally are very aware of the global picture and know that this is coming. France already has done it. The EU is lining up behind them. And so those companies in particular have already started this journey a couple of years ago. And many of them are large corporations and can afford to hire in-house an LCA practitioner. So they have their own and they've been doing their own work. For other companies that don't have that capacity, then they will hire a certified LCA practitioner to do their life cycle assessment. Now, maybe some people don't want to get a label because they're not concerned about trading globally.
Right.
But what they are concerned about, Jeff, is looking at their environmental impacts and then also knowing really what the bottom line is and how much it's costing them to produce their product.
Okay. So whether they ever publicly include
Disclose it, right.
It is an internal tool for efficiency.
Efficiency and improvement. And that's the beauty of an LCA. When you do it, for the first time, you actually see your numbers in black and white. You know what your energy use is, your water use, your water pollution, your climate change, your land use, all of those things. And until you see them in black and white, people don't really realize how much they're consuming. So when they see those, you want to reduce those. And when you reduce them, what do? You save money.
You save money. Let's go back to the cradle to grave concept.
Okay.
Describe that.
Well, the process itself, you go through, and it's a data collection exercise, really, for in easiest terms.
Okay.
And so you will go through, and for instance, with the brewers, you go way back to find out where the glass came from to make the bottle that the beer goes in. You go back and look where the hops and the grains come from that go into the recipe to make the beer. And so it's those types of things. It's the whole value chain.
Anything that has an impact on that product is going to be analyzed.
Right.
Okay. Can a company or a producer improve their scores? Obviously, if they have the results, that gives them a data point to start, and then they
Correct.
can look to find efficiencies or alternative supplies or whatever.
And that's what it does. And what happens is people will look, for instance, Cliff was saying this morning, when he did his LCA, he looked at where he gets his grains. I mean, if you get grains locally out of Eastern Washington, the carbon footprint of getting that grain here is 10 times less than
Right.
it is from getting something out of
Iowa
or North Dakota.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I mean, it really does make a difference. But again, you don't see those numbers until you've done your LCA and have a full picture of really what your impacts
And
are.
we'll talk to Cliff in a moment on this
Right.
program. So it really sounds like, in addition to internal efficiencies, there is a marketing opportunity for a company that chooses to have its life cycle analysis done.
There is, and this is all early stages.
Okay.
I mean, this is first mover advantage for companies because, as I mentioned earlier, globally, yes, there's been a lot more activity around LCA and EPD labeling. But we are starting the program for the U.S. And with our automated software that we're developing, and the craft brewers were our first group to test that out, it changes the game. Because right now, to do an LCA, depending on your product or service and how complex it is, it could cost you upwards of $150,000
Okay.
if you have to create the rule and do everything on your own.
Right.
But if you are a part of our program and get into the system with the software, then you'll be paying an annual fee to be able to put your data in and get your label.
Okay.
And I mean, for instance, Cliff, he's a one-man show on Vashon.
Right.
Brewing.
He's not. It isn't in the budget to put $150,000.
But his annual fee is only $150.
Oh, okay.
Because
so
it's
he gets
based
the
on
benefit
his
of it.
production.
Sure.
Right.
Awesome.
So-
Well, let's go visit with Cliff.
That's an awesome idea.
Program co-host Holly Smith-Peterson is going to talk now with Cliff about Vashon Brewing.
Cliff Goodman is the owner of Vashon Brewing Company, which opened in February of 2012. His labels are part of the EPD process. Was this something that you started out with an intention of doing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I had talked with Rita, the head of IERE, the organization that's doing it, and I have a long association with that group. So I was familiar with their work, familiar with their labeling process, and was very interested in participating.
Well, what advantages does it have for your business?
For me, the primary advantage is that I get good, solid information about my processes, about the environmental impacts of my business. I live on a small island. We're a sole source aquifer, that is. The drinking water that we have is dependent on rainwater. So I'm really conscious of the resources that I use in running my business. And so I wanted the information to make good, informed decisions.
Well, tell us a little bit about your business, the amount of beer that you produce and the customers that you have.
Well, customers are folks that by and large I either knew as friends and neighbors or have gotten to know because it is such a small business. My brewery is what's known in the industry as a Nano Brewery, which means I brew 1-barrel batches, about 30 gallons a batch. So it's very small. I only serve the local community. So you won't see my beer on a grocery store shelf in Tacoma or in Seattle. You pretty much have to come to the island to get it.
Okay. Now, take us through the process of brewing and how qualifying for the EPD has either changed your process or saved energy.
Oh, a lot of different ways. Being small, I was able to really spend a lot of time ahead of time designing my brewery. So, and I've incorporated things like when I use water in the brewing process, that is water aside from what winds up in the bottle, I make sure that I reuse that or store it for reuse later on. So that saves a lot of water. If I were just to use the water in the brewing process and then just put it down into in the septic system, that would be a huge waste.
Well, and what about the electricity?
Electricity, I do use a lot of electricity in heating the beer. Right. And I've been experimenting with different ideas around heating it most efficiently. And I'll probably wind up going to a solar hot water heated system. Okay.
And you said you'd also talked with Puget Sound Energy about credits?
I will be. I just recently went through an energy audit of my home, and so there may be the possibility of getting credits to help pay for the system.
Okay. And you said, I think, barley was an important part of the process, or was it hops?
Yes, it was. That was probably the biggest surprise for me in going through the LCA, was how much energy goes into producing barley. Everything from growing the crops, transporting the crops, malting the barley, kilning the barley.
And so currently you get it from Vancouver, or from somewhere in Auburn, and it comes from Vancouver. So yes. How would your backup plan be affected if, say, there was no gas or...
Right now, my closest supplier is in Vancouver, but the grain takes a long journey. It starts out, I believe, in North or South Dakota, comes out to here for the malting and kilning, and then gets trucked over to me. So every step of the way, there's a lot of energy used. And so I'm very interested in looking at local farmers in Skagit Valley who are looking at producing barley here in Western Washington.
And you said that you're all about local.
Oh, very much so. As my customers are. My customers are absolutely ecstatic that they have a local brewery on our little island. And so that actually is the biggest selling point for my customers. But for me, it's all about how can I minimize the impacts of my business.
Now, we talked about the bottles, which are very cool. You said that is a money maker for you, and for most breweries, it's a money gobbler.
Yes. So what I've gone to is a 2-pint bottle. I have a plastic cap. It's all reusable.
Okay.
And my customers love the fact that at the end of the day, they're not going to have to take this off to the dump.
So they can buy the bottle. They can get it refilled.
Yes, they can get it refilled on the island, and when they don't have to spend money on the glass every time, it actually winds up saving them money.
Now, do we see your product in local restaurants?
Yes, I have a couple of restaurants that I sell my beer at. The Hardware Store and The Rock. Those are both local island restaurants. And then there is a health food store / coffee roastery that's my main retail outlet.
Okay.
so people can go there 7 days a week and buy my beer.
Now, when these labels come out and it's actually on your bottle or on the table and people are comparing, if they're going to choose between this beer with the label or one without, is that a competitive advantage?
I think so. At least in my community, people are really interested in the environment. They're very interested in water usage issues because we are a sole source aquifer.
Right.
They're very interested in energy use. Puget Sound Energy has a program where you can purchase your power from wind as opposed to coal.
Interesting.
Coal is Puget Sound Energy's primary fuel source, but they have wind available. And I purchase all my energy through their wind program.
Okay. And then as far as the design of your product, how did that come about?
Again, it is all about being local. So I have on here the image of the Point Robertson Lighthouse. Again, it's just one more reminder that this is a local product for the local community.
So very small efforts that produce something that's completely unique and,
Yes.
And better for the environment.
Yes.
Cliff, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.
There's another application for EPD labels. In the hard goods or manufacturing world, this is Richlite, an industrial manufacturing operation near the Port of Tacoma that produces paper composite materials. Don Atkinson, what are these and what are they used for? What is a paper composite material?
Paper composite material is, the base of our material is paper. 65% of it's paper. The other 35% is a resin, the binder that holds it together. It has an extremely high strength to weight ratio. And there's a huge variety of applications. What we do is we make it into sheet form. So 4x8s, 5x12s. We can make it anywhere from 1/8 inch thick all the way up to 3 inches thick. The applications is what we really enjoy because there's not just one. It's a huge variety, all the way from industrial purposes, tooling materials, building forms out of it, all the way to consumer products where now people are making iPhone cases out of it. We're supplying guitar manufacturers for their fretboards.
Cutting boards, I think, is one of...
Cutting boards is a very, very popular item for it as well.
So the substance that you produce here is a coated paper that is multi-layered and then compressed and heated, and is that basically
Correct.
the process?
Out of a 1 inch thick piece, for example, there's about 200 layers of paper.
Okay. And why is your company interested in this whole life cycle analysis process? What's in it for Richlite?
Well, I mean, the company's family owned. It's been family owned since the inception 70 years ago. And I think the whole ethos of the family and the company is the environmental friendly aspect. And for example, 10, 11 years ago, Richlite was the first company in Tacoma to sign up for Tacoma Power's green energy options, evergreen options. And that has just kind of transcended in all aspects of the company, where now we're looking at this life cycle analysis. I would say starting 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing our own carbon footprint analysis in-house. And what we really wanted to show is the transparency. So on our website, you can see our ingredients list. You can see the formula for our resin. And the biggest thing is the transparency and kind of pulling out any greenwashing per se. And I think that's what the LCA and our EPD provides, is that it's really a set of numbers that you can kind of compare to other EPDs. It's not us saying, well, we're this great, or we're this green, or we're greener, or they're greener. You kind of take all that out and you just really get to compare transparent numbers, product versus product.
So in your case, the products that you're producing are raw materials for someone else's consumer or end use, the manufacturer or whatever. And is there not really as much of a marketing value to have a good LCA score? I mean, in the consumer market, I can understand there are consumers who will gravitate to a greener product.
Yeah, actually, in the building industry, this is becoming a very big issue.
How so?
Well, I would say starting 10 years ago, the conversation all centered around, well, do you use recycled products or this? And I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, people have understood that recycled products that should be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Where now we're talking about the entire operation of the company, not just the product. Because we can make a really super duper green product, but maybe your operation is just horrible. Maybe you waste tons of fuel and energy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of cancel each other out. The LCA looks at the entire company operation, and that's what the building products industry is going after. It's not just the materials. They're looking at the whole operation, and there's large corporate clients out there that are building new stores or new headquarters, and they are also taking an environmental slant. And what they're doing is they're going to their architects, their other, I don't know what you want.
Design professionals that are coming up with
Design
engineering.
professionals, but there's organizations out there that kind of do the legwork and look into products to see how environmentally friendly they are.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big ticket items now is your EPD,
Mm-hmm.
Environmental Product Declaration. And that goes well beyond what's in the material. It's how you make the material.
What has Richlite learned in your in your consciousness that has actually validated or improved your manufacturing process? For example, why not use a water-based resin or glue?
We actually did our own analysis before we did our LCA, specifically of the equipment that saturates our paper with the resin. And we looked at using a water-based resin versus our phenolic resin, or what people call petro-based. And what we learned through our own analysis is that if you use a water-based resin, your CO2 emissions are 5 times higher than if you use the phenolic resin that we're using. And that was actually a little surprising to us. And the reason is because you have to use all these outside gas resources
To generate the heat.
generate the
Needed the energy for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
How do you generate the pressure of the heat?
our energy comes from our own raw materials. It's the VOC gases, everything comes off of our resin, and we recycle that back as heat. Our dryer in our machine runs at 600 degrees, and all that is coming strictly off of our own raw material. So when we did our LCA, I mean, that kind of verified that it actually is working.
Wow.
It does really work. The numbers show it.
You seem like a very advanced company in the LCA process. Where do you see it going next? What's the future for the whole concept of analyzing the life cycle?
Yeah, I think the next couple of years is going to be really important as more and more companies start doing this. I mean, we're one of few that are doing it, but it is becoming a necessary part of businesses. And probably I would say the next at least 5 years, that's going to be an important time for all the companies to start to do this. So consumers can also get educated, because a lot of consumers don't know anything about the EPDs. It's really on the industrial sides right now.
Right.
And I think once it gets down to the consumer level, you're going to see all the corporations doing it. And then consumers probably can just go up to products and read labels like they do a food label.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Congratulations to Richlite. Thanks for sharing your story, Don
Thank you.
Atkinson.
Thank you.
Holly?
And that's the story of life cycle analysis. We posted links to IE, RE, and the other businesses on today's program at our own website, businessexaminer.com/SSBR. We'll be back next week with another episode of South Sound Business Report, and we invite you to join us. Tune in, same time, same channel.